What if I told you that everything you believed about the dreams of medieval lords was untrue? The image of a luxurious four-poster bed surrounded by silence and comfort, which cinema paints for us, has nothing to do with the harsh reality. Imagine cold, damp, constant danger, and uninvited guests. The medieval castle, which we see as a symbol of power and protection, was in fact a machine for survival, where sleep was not rest, but another daily battle. Watch the video to the end to find out how bedrooms were arranged, how lords and ladies slept, and, most importantly, what the true price of a comfortable night's sleep in the Middle Ages was. Something you've never seen before. A lord's bedroom is not a room, but part of a fortress, and that changes everything. We are used to thinking of a bedroom as an isolated and private space, but in a medieval castle, this room, if it existed at all, had a completely different purpose. It was often located on the upper floors of the main tower, where thick walls provided the best protection from external threats. This location was strategically important, turning the private quarters into the last line of defense during a siege. The lord's bedroom could serve as a reception room, a study, and even a place for small meetings. In the absence of a separate room, a large four-poster bed could stand right in the middle of the main hall or gallery. In this case, privacy was ensured solely by thick curtains around the bed, which also helped to retain some heat. The room itself was ascetic and not intended for idleness and leisure. The stone walls radiated an icy cold that even the largest fireplace could not overcome. The temperature inside the room was often only slightly higher than outside, which greatly affected the quality of nighttime rest. The entire interior was designed for functionality and survival, rather than aesthetic pleasure. The windows in the bedrooms, if there were any, remained small and narrow, primarily for protection. For a long time, there was no glass in them. The openings were covered with wooden shutters or oiled cloth, which let in very little light but prevented the wind from blowing inside. The walls and floors were bare, without the carpets or luxurious finishes we see in movies. In some later, richer castles, the walls could be covered with wooden panels or woven tapestries. This was done not only for beauty, but also for purely practical reasons. Wood and fabric insulated the cold stone a little and helped to prevent drafts. Tapestries also served as a kind of movable wall that could be removed and transported to another location. Furniture was minimalist, a chest for storing clothes and valuables, which also served as a bench, one or two chairs, and of course, the bed itself. Each piece of furniture had to be sturdy, able to withstand moving and long-term use. Ordinary, non-bulky furniture was a real rarity within the walls of a fortress. Weapons were always kept in the bedroom. A sword, dagger, or bow were within reach. The threat of a sudden attack, whether from political enemies or robbers, was a constant reality. The lord did not go to bed without being ready to get up immediately and defend himself and his family. Thus, the bedroom was a place where the lord of the fortress not only slept, but also spent a significant part of his life, ready to fight at any moment. The luxury we associate with the Middle Ages was ostentatious and had nothing to do with comfort. Which of these facts about medieval bedrooms surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new episodes. Want to know the main secret of how medieval people coped with the cold, which was felt much more strongly in stone castles than outside? Paradoxically, it was the majestic fortresses built to repel sieges and withstand the blows of battering rams, catapults, and fire arrows that proved to be the worst shelters from the cold. Walls that could stand for centuries, sometimes up to 4 or 5 meters thick, were excellent accumulators, but not of heat. The stone slowly absorbed the frost, slowly released it, and turned the rooms into huge ice boxes where even a bright flame seemed powerless. The interior rooms remained cold almost all winter, regardless of the number of fireplaces, braziers, or burning logs. Even the fireplaces we see today in castle halls, monumental, decorated with carvings with wide mouths, were in fact extremely inefficient. The lion's share of precious heat simply flew away into a huge chimney, which acted as a powerful ventilation system. The wide chimney created a constant draft, sucking in cold air from the street, so that the fire mainly heated only the front part of the room, turning the far corners of the hall into dark, icy pockets. Often, people sat almost right next to the hearth, feeling warmth on one side and almost winter cold on the other. The floors of castles were a separate problem. Stone slabs laid directly on the ground without any insulation constantly drew dampness, cooled the feet, and intensified the overall cold in the room. In some utility and auxiliary rooms, instead of stone, there was a compacted earthen floor, no better. It was impossible to heat such floors, and they became real cold traps. To reduce the icy effect at least a little, the floors were covered with fresh straw, reeds, or aromatic herbs, mint, wormwood, thyme. This created the illusion of cleanliness and comfort, but in fact only slightly distanced the body from the frozen stone. Since it was almost impossible to heat entire rooms, people fought the cold in a different way. They insulated themselves. The basis of survival was layered clothing: woolen tunics, undergarments, thick stockings, fur cloaks, woolen hats, and hoods, which were not taken off even at night. Thick woolen scarves and knitted hats were especially valued because people lose the most heat through their heads. The more layers of clothing a person had, the higher their chances of surviving the long, damp winter nights. The canopy bed, often perceived by modern people as a decorative element, was in reality a vital engineering device. Heavy, thick curtains, woolen, less often velvet, were lowered on all sides, turning the bed into a miniature room within a room. Inside this cocoon, the heat produced by the person themselves was retained. Sometimes the curtains were impregnated with special solutions to slow down the dampening of the fabric and better retain heat. Even light breathing entering this confined space gradually heated the area. Beds were often placed on a raised platform, not only because of status, but also because cold air sinks. The canopy over the bed served as additional protection from the cold drafts that constantly flowed along the stone walls. Without this structure, it was almost impossible to sleep. A person would simply freeze in a matter of hours. Multi-layered blankets were another vital protection. They were stuffed with sheep's wool, feathers, dry grass, or even fur. They were covered with thick bedspreads that were almost impervious to the wind. Sometimes preheated river stones wrapped in cloth or ceramic hot water bottles filled with hot water were placed under the blankets, a rare but surprisingly effective luxury. These little sunshines could maintain heat for up to several hours, preventing people from freezing in the middle of the night. Even a person's breath became a tool for survival. Breathing in the small enclosed space of the bed, they filled it with warm, moist air. This softened the sharp, burning dry cold that reigned in the rest of the room. In fact, the entire sleeping system in the castle was built not to heat the room, but to allow people to create their own small local heat and retain it by any means possible. So every night turned into a battle with the cold, where the bed served as a kind of passive thermostat and the person was the only source of heat. People lived and slept in tiny personal worlds created by fabric, feathers, fur, and their own breath. But knowing the layout of the castle and the habits of its inhabitants is only half the picture. You've definitely never heard about this unique and almost forgotten secret. People rarely talk about how medieval beds were made, even though they could tell us a lot about the lives of people at that time. The materials used to make them were not just a matter of convenience. They reflected status, wealth, social position, and even the climate of the region. But the most surprising thing is that even the richest beds, decorated like thrones, still did not provide true comfort and were far from the modern understanding of hygiene. The beds of the upper nobility looked stunning. They were massive wooden structures made of oak or walnut, covered with carvings depicting coats of arms, hunting scenes, or religious motifs. The frame could be painted in bright colors, covered with gilding, upholstered with fabrics, decorated with carved canopies, and even precious stones. At feasts and celebrations, guests could walk past such a bed and admire its decorative qualities. It was part of the interior, designed to impress. But beneath this splendor lay a structure that was almost indistinguishable from a simple peasant bed. A wooden frame with straps or ropes stretched across it and a bag of stuffing on top. Mattresses, even among the wealthy, were far from ideal. Imagine a long, heavy canvas bag filled with straw, hay, dried leaves, moss, or bird feathers. Straw was the most common filling, cheap, accessible, but extremely uncomfortable. It quickly clumped together, turning into a dense lump that pressed on the body, pricked, and quickly became dirty. It had to be changed literally every few weeks, and sometimes more often if the room was very humid. A real luxury was a mattress stuffed with down, goose down, or what was considered the most exquisite, swan down. Such a mattress was much softer, retained heat, and provided much more even support for the body. However, it was incredibly expensive. Only monarchs, the highest aristocracy, and very wealthy merchants could afford such beds. But even in these cases, the mattress required constant care. The down clumped together, so the mattress had to be regularly taken apart, and the filling fluffed up by hand. Contrary to romantic notions, sheets were very rare. If they were found, they were most often made of coarse linen, which was stiff and unpleasant to the touch. Woolen sheets were less common, but they were warmer. The cotton fabrics we are familiar with were so expensive that they could cost a fortune. Therefore, most people slept directly in their undergarments, which served as a kind of barrier between the body and the rough fabric of the mattress or blanket. Not everyone had pillows either. Small cushions stuffed with wool or feathers usually served this purpose, but even they were often too hard. Many people, including those who lived in rich castles, preferred to put rolled-up clothes or their arms under their heads. Comfort, strange as it may sound, was not the main criterion, and luxurious embroidered pillows were more often used as decorative elements than as items of practical use. However, the main enemy of medieval beds was not prickly straw and stiff fabric, but dampness. The stone walls of castles were almost always damp. In winter, due to temperature differences, condensation appeared on the stone, which quickly penetrated the filling. The mattresses began to rot, smell, and turn black, and in some cases had to be thrown away entirely. To solve the problem in some way, the mattresses were regularly taken out into the courtyards or onto sunny galleries to be aired, dried, and turned over. This helped in the summer but was almost useless in the winter. And now for the most unpleasant part. Straw, hay, and feather mattresses were ideal homes for a multitude of small creatures. Fleas, lice, bedbugs, and sometimes mice settled inside them. Literally all segments of society suffered from this threat. Rodents easily gnawed through the thin fabric of the bags, made nests inside the filling, and it was extremely difficult to deal with them. Often at night, people would feel movement beneath them. Yes, these were uninvited neighbors. People put up with this. It was considered part of everyday life, not something unusual. The result is a surprising picture. Even in the luxurious chambers of a lord, a medieval bed was not a place of rest and relaxation, but another element of harsh everyday life. Magnificent curtains, gilding, expensive fabrics, and carved headboards hid a very unpleasant reality. Hardness, dampness, parasites, and a lack of basic comfort. The best advantages of such a bed were that it was at least a little softer than the floor and was above the level of drafts. Thus, even the most magnificent bed, decorated like a throne, was in essence just a warmer, drier, and relatively clean niche in a cold stone world. And if today we look at medieval beds with admiration, it is worth remembering that for the people of that era, it was just a way to get through the night without too much suffering. If you want more unexpected, true, and slightly shocking facts about the Middle Ages, keep watching. There are many more surprises ahead. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. What you are about to learn will change your perception of nights in a castle. The most unpleasant and common violators of the night's peace were rats and mice. Castles, with their huge food supplies, kitchens, and waste, were the perfect habitat for these rodents. They were everywhere, in the walls, under the floor, in the storerooms, and worst of all, in the bedrooms. People knew that as soon as the lights went out, their hustle and bustle would begin in the silence, making the night long and restless. The castle walls may have seemed strong and impregnable, but inside they were full of voids where rodents had lived for years. These hidden corridors allowed them to move around the castle as if it were their own home. At night, when the castle was plunged into darkness, the rats boldly ventured out. Their soft paws, quick movements, and strange sounds sometimes seemed much more frightening than the noise of an external enemy. Even those who had served in the castle for a long time could not completely get used to this nocturnal activity. The thick stone walls, although protecting against enemies, were full of cracks and voids that served as ideal tunnels for rats. At night, there was a constant rustling, squeaking, and scraping that disturbed sleep. Lords and ladies lived to the sounds of this endless symphony of rodents. Even the most patient castle dwellers often complained that at night it seemed as if the walls had a life of their own. The sounds made by rats could be very varied. Sometimes it was a quiet squeak that seemed almost harmless, but more often it turned into the confident noise of little claws running across wooden beams. There were moments when the rodents created real messes, fighting over pieces of trash or food. All this interfered with rest and sometimes drove people to such a state that they could not sleep until dawn. Rats were not only a source of unpleasant noise, but also a real threat. They could gnaw through ropes, ruin clothes, and, most importantly, get into food supplies. But the worst thing was that they could attack people, especially those who were asleep. It seemed that these creatures understood when a person was defenseless and boldly took advantage of it. In reality, attacks by rodents were not uncommon. Sometimes rats would sneak into bedrooms, attracted by the smell of food that could linger even after the evening meal. During the cold months, they sought warmth and approached people even more boldly. Therefore, even the noble inhabitants of castles kept sticks or other objects nearby to scare away animals if they got too close. Blankets and bed curtains were not always reliable protection. There are known cases when rats climbed into bed in search of warmth or food scraps. It was not just unpleasant, it was terrifying, because each such incident could end in a painful bite. Sometimes the inhabitants had to change their sleeping place just to feel a little more at ease. In some castles, beds were covered with thick fabrics to create at least some barrier for rodents. But even such measures did not always work. Rats knew how to climb ropes, jump, and find the most unexpected loopholes. All this made sleep restless and the feeling of security illusory. The main way to fight rats was with cats and dogs. Castles kept many animals whose sole task was to hunt rodents. Hunting dogs and cats were not only pets, but also an important part of the sanitation system. Their work was so important that they were sometimes treated better than some servants. Primitive traps were also actively used. Wooden traps, snares, and sometimes just pitfalls with bait were set in strategically important places. However, rodents quickly learned to avoid such traps, and the struggle remained eternal. People often moved traps, changed bait, and increased security at warehouses. but it was impossible to completely get rid of rodents. Sometimes craftsmen invented new types of traps, hoping to outsmart the clever animals. But rats really did have an amazing ability to avoid danger. Therefore, the fight against them turned into a constant competition in which humans did not always emerge victorious. In the most desperate cases, poisons were used, but this was dangerous. It was impossible to control exactly where the poison bait would end up, and there was a high risk that the poison would get into food for humans or livestock. Therefore, poisons were used rarely and with great caution. Sometimes these measures brought temporary relief, but soon new rats took the vacant places. The use of poisons required strict attention. The servants who did this work knew that one mistake could cost the lives of not only rodents, but also people. Therefore, before laying out the poison, they discussed at length where it could be placed and tried to remove it before local animals could accidentally encounter the dangerous substances. Medieval people were terrified of rodents, considering them messengers of evil. This fear was quite justified, as people understood that rats were associated with disease and filth. The horror they inspired was part of everyday nightlife. People believed that the appearance of rats could mean trouble or disease, and treated them as a symbol of danger. This attitude did not arise simply from superstition. People often saw rodents spreading disease, spoiling food, and causing illness. Therefore, even the most resilient castle dwellers could not remain indifferent to the presence of these creatures. Their appearance always caused anxiety and sometimes despair. As a result, sleeping at night in a castle was a constant alternation between cold and fear. People could not completely relax, knowing that at any moment they could wake up to a squeak or, even worse, a bite. Therefore, many tried to sleep in their clothes to at least protect themselves a little from the unexpected invasion of rodents. However, even this did not always help. Sometimes the castle residents would take turns keeping watch at night to at least partially control what was happening around them. But such measures were exhausting, and it was difficult to maintain constant security. Therefore, most people simply resigned themselves to their nighttime fears, hoping that the next night would pass without incident. Ready to find out how they dealt with this horror in the next chapter? One of the most surprising features of medieval sleep was its collective nature. The idea that each person should have their own separate bed came much later. In castles, as in most medieval homes, people slept together, and there were several reasons for this. The first and most important reason was warmth. As we have already mentioned, the castle was freezing cold, and the easiest way to keep warm was to sleep huddled together. A group of people in one bed generated much more heat than one person alone, which significantly increased the chances of a warm night's sleep. The second reason was safety. In the event of a sudden attack, whether by bandits or rats, it was only possible to wake up quickly and organize a defense by being close to each other. Sleeping together gave a sense of security and allowed for a quick response to any threat. The third reason was to save resources. Curtain beds were expensive and difficult to maintain. It was much more profitable to build one large bed that could accommodate several people than several small ones. The same applied to bed linen and blankets. Collective sleep did not mean that everyone slept on the same mattress. Often it was a large, wide bed in which the lord and lady could sleep together with their closest servants, and sometimes with relatives. At the same time, the lord's bed was always in the center, and the servants were located closer to the feet or at the edges. Servants who slept in the same room as their masters served not only as human hot water bottles, but also as bodyguards. They were the first to wake up and raise the alarm in case of danger. This was part of their duty and ensured a more peaceful sleep for the Lord. This practice of collective sleeping was the norm even for high-ranking individuals, although it may seem strange from a modern perspective. The division of sleep by gender or age was not as strict as it is today. Despite the cramped conditions and inevitable discomfort, collective sleeping was a rational and logical solution in the face of constant danger cold, and lack of resources. It ensured physical survival and provided a much-needed sense of community in a harsh world. This shows that ideas about privacy in the Middle Ages were completely different. Personal space was a luxury that only a few could afford, and even then, not always. People were part of the collective even in their sleep. Ready to learn a secret that will change your life? One of the most mysterious and little-known features of medieval sleep was its two-phase nature, often referred to in sources as the first sleep and the second sleep. People did not sleep for 8 hours straight, as is customary today. Their night was divided into two parts, and this had deep roots in culture and everyday life. This applied not only to peasants, but also to townspeople, and even the nobility, since they all lived in conditions where the natural rhythm of the day depended entirely on sunrise and sunset. This way of sleeping came about naturally because it got dark early in the evening. People, tired after a hard day, went to bed almost immediately after sunset. But the body's internal rhythms were such that after a few hours of sleep, they woke up. Gradually, this became a normal part of everyday life. Surprisingly, many chroniclers and travelers of that time noted that this routine was so common that no one even thought about its peculiarities. The first sleep began shortly after dark, from about 9 to 11 o'clock in the evening. It lasted several hours, after which people woke up and went about their business for an hour or two. This time was called night wakefulness. Many families set aside special tasks for this short period so as not to waste precious minutes of daylight. During night vigil, people did not sit idle. They lit candles or torches and engaged in quiet activities that were difficult to do during the day. These could include reading, meditation, prayer, writing letters, or planning for the next day. Some housewives used this time to tidy up clothes or sew torn items. Men could prepare tools or repair small household items. During this quiet time, people often spoke in soft voices so as not to wake those who were still sleeping. This created a special atmosphere of silence and concentration. In monasteries, this period was used for reading spiritual texts, as it was believed that during these hours, people were most receptive to reflection and tranquility. Staying awake at night became a kind of bridge between the two halves of the night. Servants could prepare food for the next day, clean weapons, or repair clothes. It was a time when they could talk about their affairs without the presence of their masters. Night vigil was a time of quiet activity and reflection. Many young maids told each other stories, passing on family traditions and ancient legends that might otherwise have been lost. Sometimes people even had small family conversations, trying to discuss the past day. Such moments often became the only opportunity to be alone with one's thoughts. At night, there was no need to rush. No one demanded urgent decisions. Therefore, many chose this time to sort out complex feelings or make important decisions. For some, it was the quietest and most peaceful hour in their busy daily lives. Then came the second sleep, which lasted until dawn. Thus, the medieval night was divided into two blocks of 4 to 5 hours of sleep, separated by a period of activity. The total duration of sleep remained approximately the same as ours. People woke up with the first rays of the sun, feeling as rested as modern city dwellers after a long night. The second sleep was considered particularly deep and peaceful because the body had already gotten rid of its initial fatigue. At this time, dreams could be brighter and waking up could be gentler. Many considered this sleep a gift from nature, giving them the opportunity to greet the morning with a clear head. Peasants who had to get up before dawn especially appreciated this last stretch of nighttime rest. The reason for this sleep pattern was the lack of artificial lighting. All of life was strictly tied to the solar cycle. When darkness fell, people went to bed, and after waking up from their first sleep, they could spend time awake until it was time for their second sleep. This was observed in almost all corners of Europe, where long-lasting lighting was not available. Even when the first oil lamps appeared in cities, they remained expensive and inaccessible to most people. Therefore, people continued to live according to the same old rhythm dictated by nature itself. It was believed that following this natural cycle helped maintain health, improved mood, and even prolong life. This sleep pattern was completely normal and widespread in medieval Europe. Doctors even wrote about the benefits of staying awake at night for digestion and mental activity. It was only with the spread of powerful artificial lighting in the modern era that this pattern began to disappear. Cities began to light up in the evenings and people began to go to bed later, gradually abandoning their first and second sleeps. Gradually, this ancient way of life became a thing of the past, leaving only references in diaries and chronicles. However, sometimes you can find traditions that remind us of it. For example, some villages continued to adhere to two-phase sleep as late as the 18th century, especially in the winter months when the nights were long and quiet. Today, scientists believe that such biphasic sleep is more natural for humans than our modern 8-hour block. Perhaps our bodies still retain the memory of this ancient pattern, which manifests itself in insomnia in the middle of the night. This awakening often frightens modern people, but it was once considered normal and even beneficial. Some researchers suggest that if we allowed ourselves to follow these natural rhythms, we would feel less stress. At night, our brains can work with particular subtlety and concentration, which is why many ideas are born during this period. Perhaps this is why some creative people prefer to work at night. Thus, nighttime in the castle was not just a time for sleep. It was a time for 2 dreams and an hour of quiet, productive activity. This shows how much our lifestyle and our attitude towards sleep have changed. Which of these survival lessons do you think are still relevant today? In addition to the cold, the main enemy of comfortable sleep in a castle was the ever-present humidity. Castles were often built on hills or near rivers for better protection, but this inevitably led to increased dampness. Thick stone walls absorbed moisture, and the lack of effective ventilation made the air inside the rooms heavy and musty. Humidity caused the walls to be constantly covered with mold and moss, especially in the lower, less ventilated rooms. This not only spoiled the appearance, but also made the air unhealthy, especially for people with respiratory problems. It was almost impossible to get rid of mold. The bedrooms on the upper floors were slightly drier, but even there the humidity remained high, especially during rainy periods. Clothes and bedding quickly became damp, cold, and unpleasant to the touch. Dampness was also the main cause of rapid decay of organic materials. The straw in the mattresses deteriorated faster than it should have, and wooden beams and furniture suffered from mold and insects. This required constant repair and replacement. Primitive methods were used to combat humidity. Fragrant herbs and resins could be burned in the room to create dry and aromatic smoke. This smoke briefly dried the air and masked the unpleasant smells of dampness and mold. Charcoal braziers were also actively used, which were placed in the center of the room. Charcoal provided heat without smoke, which somewhat dried the air. However, the use of braziers was dangerous, as they emitted carbon monoxide and could only be used in well-ventilated rooms. Special attention was paid to the bed. Before going to sleep, servants could warm the bed using special metal warmers filled with hot coals. These warmers were placed under the blanket to remove dampness and make the bed warm. The constant struggle against dampness and cold demanded enormous effort and ingenuity from people. It was a daily silent war with the environment, which was no less exhausting than military campaigns. Night in a medieval castle was far from quiet and peaceful. Despite its thick walls, the castle had a life of its own, full of noise and smells that penetrated even the Lord's chambers. Sleeping in such conditions was no easy feat. The castle was home not only to the Lord and his family, but also to hundreds of servants, warriors, craftsmen, and their families. All these people, their animals, and their activities created a constant background noise that did not stop even at night. At night, one could hear the cries of the guards, the footsteps of the patrols on the walls, and the clatter of horses' hooves in the stables. In the event of an alarm or attack, the noise suddenly increased to a roar, leaving no chance of continuing to sleep. The kitchens, often located on the lower floors, continued to operate late into the night, preparing food for the night guards. The smells of cooking, smoke, and burning spread throughout the castle via ventilation shafts and stairwells. The biggest problem was the smells. Medieval sewage systems were primitive and sometimes non-existent. Waste was often dumped directly into moats or pits near the walls, creating a terrible smell, especially in warm weather. Despite all efforts to maintain cleanliness, castles always smelled of unwashed bodies, animal manure, smoke, and various waste products. The stench was part of medieval life, and people simply tried not to notice it. The use of incense, dried herbs, and aromatic oils was not a whim, but a necessity. They helped to at least somewhat mask unpleasant odors and create a more tolerable atmosphere in the rooms. Aromatic candles or oil burners could be lit in the Lord's bedroom to create the illusion of clean air. It was, in essence, a primitive form of aromatherapy designed to calm the nerves and help one fall asleep. Thus, sleeping in a castle was a constant sensory challenge. Nighttime sounds and smells were part of life, and one had to learn to sleep through the chaos. In the Middle Ages, people had very primitive knowledge of medicine and hygiene. When cold, rodents, or disease interfered with sleep, people turned to folk remedies and potions prepared by herbalists and monks. This knowledge was passed down from generation to generation and was considered invaluable, as people simply had no other choice. Many families kept their own recipes, which they believed helped protect them from terrible nighttime ailments. Often, these recipes were based on long observations of nature. People believed that each plant had its own power that could help change a person's condition. Therefore, herbalists collected their herbs only at certain times of the day or on special days when, as they believed, the plants had maximum healing power. Such beliefs were part of the culture and seemed completely natural. Many believed that sleep problems were caused by evil spirits or unkind forces. To protect against them, amulets, consecrated objects, or bundles of certain herbs, which were believed to have protective powers, could be kept in bed. People had no doubt that such items would ward off all evil and create an invisible shield around the sleeper. In some homes, such items were considered essential, especially if someone in the family suffered from night terrors. Such beliefs were deeply rooted in people's minds. Even those who rarely had trouble sleeping often kept a small protective symbol by their bed. It could be a piece of wood, a cross worn around the neck, or dry twigs of plants, which, according to the locals, scared away evil spirits. Sometimes children were given such amulets so that they would not be afraid to sleep in cold and dark rooms. Sleeping pills were known, but their use was fraught with great risk. Herbs such as mandrake, belladonna, or opium poppy were used. However, their dosage was imprecise, and their use could lead to poisoning. People understood that such plants had enormous power, but could not always predict their effect on the body. Because of this, they were only used in the most difficult cases. Errors in dosage could lead to serious consequences. Some herbs could cause severe hallucinations, temporary memory loss, or even death. That is why monks and experienced herbalists treated such plants with caution. At the same time, there were records describing how such remedies helped people fall asleep when other methods did not work. But still, they remained a last resort. Safer herbs with mild sedative effects were used much more often. Dried lavender, chamomile, or hop flowers were placed in mattresses or under pillows. Their aroma was considered calming and helped people fall asleep faster. Many noticed that these plants worked gradually, gently relaxing the body and helping to forget the worries of the day. The herbs could be stored in special bags that were transferred from bed to bed. And although the scent weakened over time, people still believed in its power. Such bags were considered almost an essential item in the household. Sometimes they were made beautiful and decorated with small embroideries to please the eye and remind one of peaceful sleep. Warm drinks were also an important means of improving sleep. Before bed, people drank hot herbal tea made from the same soothing herbs or simply warm milk with honey. It was believed that this warmed the body and relaxed it. Such drinks were given not only to adults but also to children to help them fall asleep more easily on cold nights. These simple remedies were used in many families and were considered completely safe. In winter, such drinks could be especially important as the cold penetrated everywhere, and a little warmth before bed helped people feel protected. People noted that after drinking such beverages, their sleep became deeper, and they woke up less often during the night. Another way to combat insomnia was physical fatigue. Lords and warriors spent a lot of time in the saddle, hunting, or on military campaigns, which guaranteed them deep sleep due to physical exhaustion. After a long day full of tension and risk, the body literally demanded rest. Therefore, warriors fell asleep very quickly and rarely woke up at night. However, physical exertion was not limited to the nobility. Peasants working in the fields also spent the whole day laboring. Sometimes they were so tired that even the noise in the castle or the cold air could not prevent them from falling into a deep sleep. For them, sleep was the only real rest, and they tried to make the most of every minute. For people who led a less active lifestyle, there was a problem. Unlike hard physical labor, stress and nervous tension often led to insomnia, which medieval medicine could not effectively combat. This applied to those who were engaged in mental labor, such as managers, scribes, or scientists. They could lie awake for a long time, thinking about their affairs or worrying about their responsibilities. Such insomnia could last for hours, and people did not know how to deal with it. Doctors advised them to get more rest, drink soothing herbal teas, and not think about difficult matters before bed. But this did not always help, as their inner anxiety could be very strong. Therefore, many simply hoped that their sleep would return to normal over time. Thus, people in the Middle Ages tried to improve their sleep using both magical rituals and quite rational herbal remedies. All this struggle was aimed at achieving a single goal: to ensure themselves a few hours of uninterrupted sleep. Surrounded by cold, noise, and danger, people sought simple remedies that would give them at least a brief sense of peace. Despite the difficulties, they continued to look for ways to protect their night's rest and maintain their health. Unlike modern people, who live in the same house for years, medieval lords were constantly on the move. This had a huge impact on their lives, including their sleeping conditions. Lords did not live in one castle, but owned several estates and fortresses, between which they constantly traveled. The reason for this nomadic lifestyle was the need to manage vast estates. The lord had to personally oversee the collection of taxes, hear complaints, and administer justice in different parts of his lands. He could not manage everything from a single center. Constant travel meant that the lord and his entourage had to take their most important possessions with them. Among these possessions was his personal bed. Yes, the bed frame, mattresses, blankets, and curtains were dismantled, packed, and transported from one castle to another. This fact once again emphasizes the high value and importance of the bed. It was not just a piece of furniture, it was a status symbol, the lord's mobile home, which guaranteed him a certain level of comfort wherever he was. The castles where the lord stayed often did not have a complete set of furniture. There were only basic, built-in elements. The lord brought the most luxurious and important items, the bed, tapestries, chests, with him. Although moving was tiring, it had a positive side from a hygiene point of view. Regular changes of residence allowed the accumulated dirt, insects, and odors to be left behind. Moving was a kind of sanitary cleansing. On the other hand, constant moving created a problem of adaptation. Each new castle, Each new bedroom had its own characteristics: different temperature, different humidity, different sounds and smells. One had to constantly get used to new surroundings. All this mobility shows that medieval life was much more dynamic and less sedentary than we imagine. Sleep in these conditions was not only a physiological need, but also part of a complex administrative process. We immersed ourselves in the harsh world of nighttime sleep in a medieval castle. We learned that a canopy bed was not a luxury, but an engineering feat for survival, that people struggled with cold, dampness, and rodents, and that their sleep was divided into two phases. The harsh truth is that the comfort and privacy we value were completely unavailable to people of that era. Sleep was not rest, but another round in the battle for survival. Which of the details about sleep in the castle that you saw today did you find most shocking? Was it two-phase sleep or the constant presence of rats? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new research into history and culture.